everyone. Welcome and thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of the Research Spotlight. I'm sure you'll be asking yourself, why is Dr. Martin here again? He was here a couple of weeks ago, so why are we seeing him here again? As you can see, or as you saw from our previous video, there were a little bit of challenges with regards to the connection. So he has been so kind enough to come back to share again with us. So thank you so much, Dr. Martin Owusu-Mensah.
Thank you so much, Tisha, for having me again.
Yeah, so a little bit about Dr. Owusu-Mensah if you missed the last time. So Dr. Owusu-Mensah graduated with a PhD in nuclear energy from the Université Paris-Saclay in France, where he specialized in nuclear materials and radiation safety. And he is currently a lecturer at the Department of Physics, KNUST Ghana, the same department he graduated from in 2013. His research interests are focused on radiation safety and radiation physics to study the health effects of radiation on the public. And yeah, so good to have you here again.
Thank you so much, Tisha, for having me again.
Yeah, I hope you're enjoying your afternoon.
Yes, it's been a nice afternoon, and I'm glad to be back because we had a wonderful conversation the last time, but unfortunately we had to come back again.
Yeah, the connection was not helpful. But anyway, today, thankfully, everything is going to be fine. Yeah. So, Dr. Owusu-Mensah, what influenced your career path?
So I always say I have a quite unique and interesting story. So I always say that when I was growing up, I wasn't like the regular children growing up when they had their usual career choices. That when they ask you, oh, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a teacher, I want to be that, I want to be that. I didn't really know. Anytime they asked me, it was difficult to know exactly what I wanted to be when I was young. I was someone who wanted to just explore, live life, and then allow the choices come to me. But what I really wanted to be when I was young, as I said the last time, was to be a Catholic priest. And that was influenced mostly by Archbishop Charles Palmer Buckle, the Catholic Archdiocese, or the Catholic Archbishop of Cape Coast. So we had that link where anytime he came to my church, he was close with me and that. So I just admired the profession and it felt like this is something I would like to be in one day. So that was the career choice I had in mind when I was young. But it gradually changed when I started playing football, as I said, and I wanted to be a footballer. But you know, in our society, almost 1 out of every 2 or 1 out of every 3 kids play football in Ghana. So usually parents are not a fan of football because they realize that if you take the number of people who play football, how many of them are successful? Yeah. Just a few of them. You can talk about the Asians, the Apias, and others. But lots of the others who also play football do not gain such success. So most parents do not like their children playing football. So my mom didn't want me to play football. She wanted me to focus on my books. So I just decided
Your dad, did he want you to play football, or he was also just like your mom?
My dad, he was okay with the idea of playing football. He bought me my boots, all my football apparel, my shin guards, footballs. He was okay with the idea of whatever I wanted to do. But I think my dad is the biggest influence in my career path because he was, at the time, he was a physics teacher before he moved on to GES. So he had these huge physics encyclopedia, books on physics and others. So when I was young, I could go through these books. Sometimes not necessarily to read all the details, but sometimes just to have glimpses of that. So as I was going to the university, I actually didn't know what I wanted to do. But some way, somehow, I think by dint of faith, just like my dad, I ended up reading physics. And I think I began to gain interest in physics during the undergrad. And then I decided to focus.
So you enrolled as a physics student. That was when the interest started coming?
Exactly. When I was going into read physics, I didn't really know all the details of doing physics. Because my dad was always talking to me or teaching me physics and things. So it's like I had a soft spot for physics because my dad had been teaching physics before he moved on to GS. So the physics was with him.
Mm.
And he's one of those smart guys who had his physics up there. And
Mm.
can you imagine when I was even in the university, he was able to teach me physics without taking a textbook. He was those kind of people
He
who had done
understood his
physics.
stuff.
So he knew his stuff. So I think he was also part of the career choice why I ended up doing physics. And I think during the undergrad, I began to enjoy it. And then eventually I decided to further to do a master's. And by ended up doing a PhD, a postdoc, and here I am lecturing people to also do physics. So it's an interesting career choice because I didn't have it all figured out. I am someone who had the chance to live life and allow it to come to me, as I always say.
Great. Do you feel fulfilled doing what you do now?
Yes, I really do feel fulfilled doing what I'm doing now. I feel there's a bit of my dad's physics in me, just that I'm not at his level because those days I'm sure they enjoyed physics, doing physics more. But I'm really happy and I feel this is really what I needed to do. But I've not thrown my passion, the other passions away, like my
The
love
Reverend
for
Minister or
football
the
and
football?
others. Yes, I may eventually, you never know, become
The
a priest to share the word of God. You never know. And I also still love football a lot. So I don't mind entering into sports commentary or being a sports journalist in addition to what I do now. Those are all things that I feel I could still do, but I'm focusing on the career research because I love research and I love sharing ideas with people. I'm someone who likes to talk with people, share ideas with people. So my students will tell you that sometimes after the lecture, we could stay in for 30 minutes where we could just be sharing ideas,
Talking
talking
about
about things, giving ideas to them, some advice, career choices and things. So those are things I love to do. That's why I believe I'm in the right profession because when it comes to sharing knowledge and sharing ideas, I think I'm in there. So I find it a really enjoyable profession when it comes to lecturing or research. Yeah.
great. Yeah, we know that physics is quite broad. So, which aspect of physics are you? It's your research work or your lecturing career focused on?
Okay, so my undergrad was more focused on biomedical physics, as you know, in KNUST.
Mm.
But during my master's, I focused more on nuclear science or nuclear energy. And then eventually my PhD was in a part of nuclear energy, more focused on nuclear materials and radiation safety because the materials are supposed to prevent accidents and anything. So it's on safety. So that is where my research work actually focuses on. So the whole idea is that nuclear energy has existed for decades upon decades, okay? And in order to achieve our sustainable development goals of clean energy, we can't do away with nuclear energy. Nuclear will have to be part of one of the means to curb all this climate change and other issues. But nuclear, as we all know, has had a few challenges when it comes to nuclear accidents, like the Chernobyl, recently the Fukushima, and others. Okay, and all this stems from the fact that the materials for some of these nuclear reactors were probably not well built. Okay, like in recent times, people are trying to develop more accident tolerant fuels. These are new materials that can replace the already existing zirconium alloys. It's these zirconium alloys that can lead to some hydrogen accumulation and hydrogen explosion and others. So if we can eliminate and improve some of these materials with new materials, then we are looking at ensuring that the nuclear is now as safe for humans as possible. And I don't know if you know, but Ghana has plans of going nuclear very soon. And if everything goes to plan, the construction of Ghana's first nuclear power plant should begin in 2024, I believe. If you
Oh,
check out Ghana's nuclear plan or nuclear program, that's the ideal situation. We hope it starts. So if it's going to start, we need to look at some of these challenges because the main thing people are worried about is usually the safety. And when you're talking about the safety, the main thing is the development of new nuclear materials that can withstand some of these conditions. And that is where my research really focuses on, where we look at developing some of these new nuclear materials for radiation safety that can ensure that we can have nuclear reactors in Ghana. And these nuclear materials we are going to use for these reactors are going to be as safe for humans as possible to prevent any nuclear accident and then eliminate the thought of possible nuclear accidents or things because people are really scared of nuclear. So if we're able to develop nuclear, we'd have to make sure that it was safe as possible for the general public. And that is where my research work focuses on mainly.
Okay, that's great to know. But you know what? For people in your field, or like for physicists or nuclear physicists, this may not be a problem because maybe you know that the nuclear is not as dangerous as some of us see it. But how do you get some of us informed about what you are doing? Like, how do we get to know that? Oh, so after all, nuclear is not this dangerous. I mean, I'm talking about the Ghanaian population. If we are going into nuclear in like 3 years time or 2 years, you said 2 3 years time.
Yes, 3 years.
Yeah, how do we get to know that okay, we have Dr. Martin and Co working or making sure that there is nuclear safety in Ghana?
Okay.
How do we get to understand these things?
Okay, so Ghana has had a long-lasting link with nuclear. So Dr. Kwame Nkrumah was the one who actually established the Ghana Atomic Energy Commission, okay, way back in the 1960s, and we've had been training nuclear engineers for years. But for years, we're training the engineers or the nuclear scientists, and because they were not really producing nuclear energy, most of them left to the Western world to contribute to their nuclear growth, okay? So our nuclear program has been spearheaded by the Ghana Atomic Energy Commission, okay?
Okay.
And they are in charge of all the nuclear power program. And they have bodies in charge of sensitizing the general public about nuclear power program or how is the state of the nuclear program in Ghana and many others. So from time to time, they organize seminars, training formations, sometimes some of these. One recent program was at the engineering school in Kane University, where the director of the nuclear power program in Ghana, Dr. Robert Sobaji, was there to share the nuclear growth of Ghana and where Ghana has gotten to when it comes to nuclear. And it will surprise you to know that most of these students in academia in Kane University had no idea of nuclear. And this was their first time hearing about it. And it was very informative for most of them. And for some of us, we're happy that finally we're beginning to know exactly what is being done with nuclear and at which stage of growth or development Ghana is at now. So I think some of these programs should go on, and then we should try to improve and sensitize the general public on the idea that nuclear is safe, it's reliable, and then we are all able to have nuclear power as clean and an energy source as possible and contributes to our energy contribution. So it's all about sensitizing to conferences, to live shows, and things that the general public would eventually come to terms with. And I'm sure once we are going nuclear and then the construction is about to begin, it will be a nationwide topic. It will be in the newspapers, it will be on the radio, it will be on TV, and then people will now begin to really know about the nuclear story and we can share and explain to them in terms of the layman to be able to really understand at which stage of development we are. So I think it's just a matter of time. It's a gradual process. We have to start with the intellectuals, some of these students and others who are even yet to have an idea what nuclear can give or what it's actually used for. Then we can gradually move on to the general public and the masses and explain exactly what nuclear power does and how it can contribute to our nation building.
Wow, thank you. Thank you for the insight.
Yeah.
So what is a typical day like for a Ghanaian lecturer and researcher?
Okay, so as I said to you the last time, lecturers have three core responsibilities. That is lecturing, research, and then service to the society. Okay, so a typical day in the life of a lecturer would depend at which period. Okay, so if it's before students coming, you're probably more focused on preparing your lecture notes, improving your lecture notes, preparing for the start of the academic year. So I'll probably be spending most of the time in the office preparing my lecture notes and others. But if it's during the course of the semester, most definitely I'll be doing a lot of lecturing or a lot of teaching. I actually do teach a lot of courses because we do not have a lot of nuclear lectures. So I ended up teaching a lot of courses. Sometimes within the week, I'm extremely busy taking one class after the other and so on. And in addition to that, there's also the need to supervise students, their lab work, their project work, and others. So in the course of the semester,
You're
you
a
spend
young
a lot of your
lecturer, so
hours.
you have you're a young lecturer, so you have all the energy for all these.
I'm always glad to take up some of these responsibilities, but I'm just explaining to you how some of these things go on. So in a normal day, you spend a lot of your hours giving lectures and then supervising some of these students and so on. So the time you get usually to do a lot of the research is usually in the evenings. Sometimes after 5 p.m., where you can stay in the office for a couple of hours and do a little bit of research, or continue when you are home to do a lot of research. And if it's on vacation, like the students are on vacation now, you have a lot more time to do research. So that is where we do a lot of our research, because after grading your students, you have now time to read papers, think about new ideas for research, like I am doing now, and then trying to get many new ideas through meetings, collaborations, and others, and then trying to build these. So it usually depends on which period of the year it is, and then we are usually focus on one more service than the other, or one more role than the other. So if it's during the semester, you do a lot of lecturing and a little bit of research. But once they're on vacation, then you're able to do a lot of research and service contributions with very few lectures. So that's how a typical day goes. And usually the day is supposed to start at 8 and end at 5,
But
but
for
usually
you,
the day ends
you're
much
working
later,
every
and
day.
then even on weekends you still will have to work sometimes. So it usually varies. So a typical day depends on exactly which time of the year it is. Yeah.
Yes. Wow, great. You talked about research, and we know that for researchers, it's publishing your papers that puts your work out there
Exactly.
for the public to see. So when you are writing these articles, do you have in mind? I mean, is the focus on just people in your community, or you sometimes consider some of us who are not in your field? Like, for example, if I pick a paper that Dr. Martin has written, will I be able to understand, or it is just for those in your community?
Okay, so the main idea of a scientific paper, okay, is to share your research findings with the rest of the world. Okay, so a scientific paper should be a paper that tells a story of what you have done. Okay, so
Mhm.
we always say that some of the best scientists or some of the best researchers in the world are usually some of the best storytellers. Okay, because as a researcher, you have conceived an idea. Okay, and then you went ahead to perform an experiment, gain some results, and you were able to analyze and derive a conclusion out of what you have done. So now the main idea now is to be able to communicate this to everyone. Okay. So the scientific paper should be put in such a way that it tells a story where anyone in any field can be able to pick up your paper and tell exactly what you did. That's why I always say that some of the best scientists are some of the best storytellers, because you are going to tell what you have done in a story form, so that when anyone picks up the paper, he or she will be able to do exactly what you did. So I'm a physicist or nuclear scientist, but that doesn't mean I only read papers related to nuclear science or nuclear materials. Sometimes most of the research we do are interdisciplinary. Sometimes you would have a bit of material science, you have a bit of geology, you have a bit of geophysics, you have a bit of computing, you have, so it has to be multidisciplinary, such that, because your paper is not only going to be read by one field or expert area, it's going to be read by so many other people, because there might be social scientists who may be doing some work but end up knowing that no, they need a little bit of material science, so they will need to be able to read your paper to understand. So that is the whole idea of a scientific paper, but we just organize them in certain ways such that these scientific works are regulated. Okay, that is how come we have these peer review journals and others, so that there is a standard for these scientific papers. Okay, because you need other scientists who are in your field or higher to be able to look at your work, read it, and regard or assess the quality of the work you have done.
Mm.
And that is the whole idea of scientific papers. And to be able to know that indeed what you have done is not just something that just is a random thing. Anything you do should be reproducible. That's the whole idea of scientific work. You have a new idea you want to share with the rest of the world. It's sharing your work with the rest of the world. That's all the scientific paper does. So any person who picks your paper should be able to go through your work, see exactly what you did, and be able to follow. That's why we organize the paper in the abstract. You tell your story. You introduce exactly what you did in the introduction. That is why the introduction of a paper is so key. Because the introduction is where you explain to the ordinary person who has never been involved in your field exactly what is it is in your field and what you are going to talk about. Then you can talk the details to the results and the methodology about exactly what you did, how you went about it, and how you obtained your result. That's why a scientific paper is a good story. So we always say that scientific papers are stories. You just have to narrate it in a nice way such that everyone who follows it is able to read, understand, and be able to do exactly. So that if someone wants to repeat your work, they can be able to take a paper, read it, and do exactly what you did and get the same exact result. If the person does it and does not get the same exact result, then definitely there should be something wrong with what
Wrong.
you have done. Exactly. So it should be well laid out for everyone. That's
To
why
understand.
we give papers even sometimes to undergrad students, and they should be able to read, understand, and then sometimes summarize or give comments or criticisms on these papers. They are not experts in the field, but they should be able to give their understanding on some of these works. Yeah,
Wow, great. That means that to be a scientist or to be a researcher, you should be skillful in communication, right? You should be a great communicator because I mean,
exactly.
you may have done or you might have done a great work, but if you don't know how to communicate it, it becomes a problem.
Exactly. So scientific communication is very, very key, no matter what. So the whole idea of a science is that the reason people are able to do masters and PhD is the fact that they are being trained to be researchers. Okay, so it's a training process, a master's and a PhD. So elsewhere in Europe, usually people call it as PhD training. So we are training you to become a researcher. And during this training period, you are expected to be able to learn how to write articles or scientific papers. That's why usually in most universities, you are obliged to submit or be able to at least publish a couple of papers before you graduate. The whole idea is that we are training you to be able to understand how the scientific world works and how to be able to communicate your scientific work to the rest of the world. In addition to that, most of the people are required to attend conferences, seminars, where you're able to stand in front of your colleagues, scientists, researchers elsewhere, and share your idea with them such that people can pose questions to you and understand exactly what you did. So those are all part of the PhD training that students are expected to go through once they are doing a PhD. That's why we call it a scientific training or a PhD training.
Training.
So we train you to be able to go through these. That's why it is a requirement for most scientists that you be able to go through at least a PhD, such that you are trained in a way to be able to communicate your scientific work, not just the knowledge, but your scientific work to the rest of the world. Because if you have your work and you're not able to share it with the rest of the world, it
There's
remains,
no point.
yes, it remains fruitless. So you should be able to communicate your work. That's why a PhD training is essential. We are always encouraged to prepare posters, oral communication, poster presentations, and many different forms so that you are well equipped to be able to now fit in the scientific community where you can share your ideas and your work with the rest of the world. Yeah.
Wow, great. So, Dr. Owusu-Mensah, you have had the opportunity of studying in France, and then
Yes.
also you had a postdoc in the States.
Yes, please.
So, and currently you are working in Ghana as a
Yeah.
lecturer and researcher. Are you satisfied with the current situation of research work in Ghana?
Well, if I say I am 100% satisfied with research work in Ghana, that would be a big lie. But is it improving? Yes, it is improving greatly. So we are making great strides, okay? But we are not there yet. So I think that um, the university or most universities are now beginning to do a lot better. So Kenya University has an internal mechanism of generating funds for some small projects or small research, which is sponsored by the university. So lecturers who have ideas, who want to conduct some form of research, are allowed to apply for some of these smaller grants provided by the university to carry out some of these works. These were not done in the past. So that already shows you that the university is already trying to find ways and means of addressing some of these issues. And other things are also the fact that previously we didn't have a lot of African research grants. But now there are lots of African research grants that are cropping up. Some are like the JWO, the Jennifer Oppenheimer grant. We have the Arise PP and a few others. These are African research grants to solve African issues. So the main thing is that African problems can only be solved by Africans.
Mhm.
And you know that in our part of the world, people are quick to criticize, but they are not quick to give solutions as to how to address the problems. That is our problem. So you see that people criticize politicians a lot. When they get into the same situation, they end up doing the same thing. It's because we are quick to criticize. Yes, we are always quick to criticize, but providing the solutions, it becomes a problem. That's why people sit elsewhere in the world and then they keep criticizing the situations around the country and others. But when they are brought down to take up some of these positions, because they
They are not
criticize a lot and they were not providing solutions, they end up repeating the same mistake. So we are quick to criticize, but we are not quick to provide solutions. But African problems can only be solved by Africans. There's no way Europeans are just going to come down to Africa and solve our African problems. So if we are going to grow, it has to be that African researchers will begin to have to think about solving African problems.
problems.
So African problems are not going to be solved by anyone else except ourselves. So we would have to look at a critical way of looking at how to solve our problem. And I think that is why some of these research grants that are sponsored by African institutions or African organizations are very key. They'll be able to look at how to solve exactly what issues are facing Africans. Because a lot of these grants that are available, that are usually sponsored by the West, they usually have a target at solving some problems. Okay, so even though they are the regular SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. Okay, there are 17 of these goals that helps us looking at poverty reduction, hunger reduction, clean energy, and all these. Those are general ones, but we know our problems and we know exactly how we can solve our problems. And it is only by providing funding for research through African grants focused on African problems that will be able to solve some of these problems. So it's very good that now we are beginning to get a lot of these African organizations beginning to now look at solving some of these problems by providing research grants. So I think it's already a big step already being taken. But the biggest challenge I have had has been with the government. Okay, the university is trying to play its part. The lecturers coming in are trying to play their part. Other African organizations and others are beginning to play their part. But there is no commitment on the side of government to support research in Africa or research in Ghana. Let me focus on that. So, for example, there's no national research grants. So even if it was a few millions and it was a national research grant allocated for researchers, some of the researchers with the best ideas will be able to solicit for some of these funds to solve some of these problems. So we realized that this became a problem, especially in the case of COVID. So when COVID came, because we do not have fully funded or sponsored infectious disease research, there was no research for the production of any vaccine. So we had to go out there and solicit for some of the money to be able to get some vaccines or begin any research. Okay, but if we already had some of these money invested in some of these research, all we would have done is probably collaborate with scientists elsewhere to be able to speed up our growth or our development of some of these vaccines. But there's no commitment on the side of government such that these scientists are trying to solicit for funds from elsewhere except the government to be able to provide solutions for our country. That is why I have a big problem because I've seen the enthusiasm with which young scientists are being drawn into our country. So even
Yeah.
in my department alone, this year there have been about 6 or 7 new lecturers. And these are very young and vibrant lecturers who are willing to be innovative and creative
Well,
and solve problems. Okay, so even in my department now, I don't know if you've noticed, but the department has become now more visible on social media,
yeah, yeah.
on Facebook
Mm.
and on LinkedIn, sharing some of the innovative things being done in the department. And for the first time, even graduate students, undergraduate students,
Posters and stuff
yeah,
like
were required to
yeah,
do posters.
yeah.
In
I
my
saw it
time,
on
undergrad
social media.
students had no idea what posters are. So this
Mm.
tells you that young people are vibrant and they are willing to do some of the brisk research and contribute as much as possible to the development of our nation. But there's also the need from the government side to provide a means to look at how we can solve some of these problems. Because we can't just be looking at the fact that we are always going to be looking for money from the West to solve some of these problems and others. No, we would have to begin to look internally as to how we can begin to generate some of these funds to be able to solve some of these problems. So that is my only thing. But if you ask me, there's a big improvement. But that doesn't mean we are there yet. We still have a big challenge when it comes to infrastructure, funding, and
And
many
then,
others. But I think a lot of these bodies are beginning to do well. The universities are
yeah.
doing well.
Maybe the
Young
strikes. There
researchers.
should be more strikes.
Ah, well, I don't know if that's the solution, but we
Yeah,
hope that.
because we need to put pressure on them.
No, I
Maybe.
think that one thing I think could be a solution for us is that some of these young Ghanaians or young people who have these ideas should begin to take up some of these positions of decision making. That is the
Okay.
only way we can effect a change. So if you sit back and you only criticize, it will bring no change. The
Mm,
people in power will continue doing the same thing.
mm.
But if you want to effect a change, you have to take control. You have to take charge. So some of these young people would have to take up some of these roles. I
I agree
know
with
it's
you.
academia should be separate from politics, but
Mm.
if we want to effect a change, some of these young people have to take up some of these roles and effect changes because no one is going to effect changes if we don't take up this step. So I feel that that is the one way we can look at things where young people will now begin to look at taking up some of these roles and not repeating the mistakes the others have done in the past.
Mm.
Because we've had situations where younger people have taken up these roles and
But
repeated
then,
the same mistakes. But if we have young people coming in, taking up roles and trying to correct some of these mistakes, that is where we begin to see a growth and a change. Because some of these old people, they only have a few more years to live. Okay, but the future rests on the youth and the younger ones coming up. You have to take charge of your future, take up some of these roles, and effect a change. That's the only way we'll be able to get to where we really want to be. So I say in some of these things, we'll have to get some of these young people going in there and making a change, deciding that no, we need research grants for researchers. Let's push this in there. Let's do this for researchers. Let's do that. Let's ensure equity, sustainable development, zero hunger, and then we can begin to see that change.
great. Thank you. Thank you so much. You've shared a lot with us today. Thank you. What would be your final words to a younger person watching you and desiring to follow your footpath?
Um, so I always say that if you want to be a researcher, okay, I believe everyone intuitively is a researcher one way or the other. So from the time we are young, okay, you see that we try to solve problems. You see that sometimes when your mother's TV remote is not working, you open it up, you are curious about trying to fix this remote and getting it to work and do many other things. Those are some of the things that are intuitively part of us. We are intuitively tuned into the direction where we are problem solvers. And that is where the direction of the world is going at now. We need to be looking at training young people to be problem solvers. And all scientists do are paid to do what? Solve problems. Okay, all scientists are paid to do and solve problems. So the whole idea is that for anyone who wants to be a researcher, I believe that intuitively you should have the desire to solve problems.
Mm.
Okay, just like every young child is desiring to solve problems, you should have that desire to solve problems. And once you are curious and then you are motivated enough, I believe you are already in the right direction or in the right road to be able to solve some of these problems. So I remember there was this story I think I told you the last time where I read a story about the award of the best nurse in the Ashanti region. And the lady being interviewed was asked why she believes she deserved this award, and she said that she believes she deserved the award because of some of the innovations she had put in place at just her hospital. And then I was very much inspired by some of these innovations she kept on elaborating. And then these are very innovative and very creative. If such a lady should put down her thoughts on paper, that would easily pass for a scientific paper. So intuitively, we have something in us that makes us want to solve problems. So I always say that research is a way of life. So if you want to become a researcher, it should be part of your life to be able to solve problems. It should be part of your life to be able to solve problems. And sometimes people feel that, oh, research is a way of having a good career where you can make enough money. If you want to make money, research is not the thing for you. There's not enough money in research. It's a way of life at solving problems that will probably not pay you enough. If you want to make money, I would encourage you to go into procurement or management or something like that. Not
Business.
but if you really want to be a researcher, you should have the drive, the desire, the motivation, and you should be able to learn. Okay, because it's all about learning and improving yourself each passing day. As a researcher, you learn all the rest of your life. So I read a funny quote where someone was complaining on the fact that he has a boring life. And then there was a post about a teacher saying that a teacher goes to school from when he's born to when he dies. You go to school every single day. Is that not boring enough? So if if it's not for you and you are not motivated or you don't have the drive to do it, you would get bored because it's doing the same thing but trying to solve problems over and over again. So you should have that intuition to be able to solve problems. And that will give you the drive, the desire, and the motivation to be able to really achieve your goals and do the work you really want to do. So I always give a simple advice to everyone who wants to be a researcher that first of all, you should have a dream that some of these intuitions to solve problems come because of the fact that you have an intuition, something pricks you to be able to solve a problem. And that is a dream you should have. Okay. And then once you have that dream or desire to solve a problem, you should take a step. Okay. So you don't just have these good ideas and sit on them. You should be able to take a step. Okay. By taking a step, you should be build yourself along the line. Okay. You should be able to build yourself. So I always tell people that as a young person, not even as a researcher, as a young person, you should be able to build a skill. Okay. You should be
I
able to build a
mentioned it the
skill.
last time also.
Yes, you should be able to build a skill as you go on because the skill is so important. The world as we see it today, I said the last time, is like a market. Okay? People will only pay you for what you can offer. If you have nothing to offer, it becomes difficult for people to pay you. But if you have something to offer, people you always keep making money on what you have to offer. So I always tell people that when you are improving yourself, learn a skill. If it's programming, whatever, web design, whatever you want to do, just learn it and keep improving on it. It will be a skill that will serve you so well. And then the world we are now, everything is being done online. People are providing services online. All jobs are now becoming remote after COVID, where people have to work remotely, creating jobs or services online. So if you're able to build some of these skills, you just provide your service online and solve problems for people and they pay you for it. So as you dream and then you decide to improve yourself, you learn a skill. And then once you learn a skill, the opportunity will arise, and then you will be ready to take up some of these opportunities when they come and provide the service and then be recognized for that. So it's all about taking what comes at you, but being prepared when the right time comes.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Martin Owusu-Mensah, for sharing a lot with us today. We appreciate the time. Yeah, coming
You're always welcome. You're
despite
always
your busy
welcome.
schedule.
You're
Yeah.
always welcome.
Great. And thank you so much, viewers, for making time for today's episode. See you in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.